Can we give Dr. Kaku one more round of applause here? Wasn't that a fantastic talk? Yeah, thank you very much. So for those who didn't meet me the other day, my name is Ryan Harring. I am Director of Partnerships and Alliances at IonQ. I take this very complex topic of quantum physics and I try to distill it down in such a way that an executive can understand. It's a very tall task for somebody like me, but I rely heavily on things like things that Dr. Kaku would bring to the table. So I would work very closely at the intersection of these conversations and then distill them down. So the last few decades, we've witnessed an extraordinary acceleration in technology and infrastructure primarily. From the rise of the internet and mobile connectivity, all the way to the internet and fiber networks, AI, and globally connected systems. They essentially shape every part of our modern life these days. One of these advances, many of these advances once felt theoretical and decades away. Yet today, they underpin the global economy and how society operates. Now, we appear to be entering another important transition point, one where advances in quantum computing, quantum networking, quantum sensing, quantum AI, and quantum secure communications are beginning to converge in ways that could fundamentally reshape industries, infrastructures, and governments alike. Few people have spent more time helping the world think about these advancements than Dr. Kaku. And today, we're very excited to have him answer a couple questions about where this industry is going and how it relates to our day-to-day activities. Dr. Kaku, thank you again for joining us. So I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. When most people hear the word quantum, they still tend to think it's a very far-off future technology. From your perspective, can you tell us a little bit fundamentally what's different about this technology compared to previous technological cycles?
Well, previous technology cycles took centuries, decades to mature. The steam revolution, for example, it took over 100 years before we began to control steam power. Now we're talking about the fact that the cycle is going to be compressed to the point that a few decades, we're talking about something that goes from an idea into things that create profit and progress. Take a look at the transistor. The transistor changed everything just in a matter of a few decades. And so now we're talking about the next coming revolution. So we've already seen artificial intelligence. Just in a matter of a few years, we're talking about a technology that was from science fiction, artificial intelligence, to something that's now in children's history books. So we're talking about something that's advancing very quickly. And the next big jump will be quantum computers. We don't know how that's going to work out because we're not talking about atoms. But some people are saying that that could be the next big jump, the jump from artificial intelligence to quantum computing.
It's truly fascinating to see the advancement of these technologies, and it seems that the TRL cycles seem to be getting shorter and shorter as we bring on these new technologies. Similar to AI, so AI has dramatically accelerated the pace of technology and change over the past few years. How do you see AI influencing the trajectory of quantum computing, and then of course quantum computing advancing the influence of AI?
Well, I think AI and quantum computing are complementary. They reinforce each other. So for example, artificial intelligence is becoming smaller, more versatile, more flexible, to the point that your cell phone has AI embedded in it. While quantum computers are huge and gigantic. You saw what they look like. They're the size of a gigantic construction. So we're talking about the merger of the two, that when you communicate with a quantum computer, you'll talk to your cell phone. Your cell phone will be the conduit by which you can access the power of a quantum computer. So the marriage between AI, which gets smaller and smaller every year, and quantum computers, which is still huge, will be the future. The marriage of the two.
Yeah, I was telling somebody the other day that disaggregation will eventually happen. You know, if I think 10 years out, this is just me personally thinking, you won't understand that your cell phone or your next computer program is going to be doing superposition and interference and entanglement in the background. It's just going to happen. Similarly to the way that we're using cell phones today. Sure, some of us understand what's under the hood of these, these machines, but we don't fully know and have a close alliance with what they're doing. So Dr. Kaku, historically transformative technologies have really required massive infrastructure build-outs before, usual broad adoption. Electricity did this, steam did this, the internet, cloud computing has done this. How important do you think that networking and communications infrastructures will be to the future of quantum systems? You sort of touched on this a little bit at your keynote, but just maybe underscore or double-click on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think quantum computers will go the same way as previous technologies. It's going to be done in stages, and one stage will make the next stage possible. Right now, we're at the beginning, just the beginning, where you saw pictures of quantum computers. They're huge. And how many atoms can they compute on? 100. Qubits is the measure of a unit of quantum computation. The most advanced quantum computers compute on maybe 100 qubits. To do something practical would require thousands of qubits. So we're still at the beginning stages now. We're just at the beginning stages, seeing the birth of quantum computers, but the full power won't be manifest for many more years. Now, in the newspapers, sometimes you read articles that a quantum computer solved the problem that would take a digital computer 1,000,000 years to solve. Well, yeah, but these problems are fake. They're imaginary problems. They're not practical problems. They don't tell you about prices, supply and demand. They are imaginary problems cooked up by mathematicians. Real problems that are solved by quantum computers are still not here yet. We see the promise, but we have a long ways to go still. So we're looking at a technology in its infancy. In its infancy, that's where quantum computing is. Now, in 10 years, everything could change. The CIA, the FBI, yeah, they're onto it. They realize that in principle, once the promise of quantum computers gets fulfilled, maybe within 10 years, who knows, we're talking about being able to break any digital code. Let me repeat that again. A quantum computer, in principle, on paper anyway, can break any digital code, which includes your bank account, which includes the Fed, which includes currency. The whole fabric of capitalism is digital. In principle, a quantum computer can break through that and perhaps even collapse the nature of commerce itself. That's why it's very important that we stay on top of this, even though it's in its infancy at the present time. We're talking about a technology that can, in principle, break down the digital society of today.
Yeah, that's very good. And so IonQ is working really hard on trying to develop the scalability and then the shrinking and the miniaturization of these platforms. So for instance, we can deploy a quantum computing system in 1042U racks times 2 wide. We can actually go and deploy these systems today. When you think about what's happening in the world of RSA encryption, I think you touched on this a little bit. Another thing that's very interesting is we are aggressively accelerating roadmaps, and we believe we have a path to get to 80,000 logical qubits by 2029. And as you think about that alone, having that kind of compute power and taking your statement that you just mentioned about being able to hack into RSA encryptions and these secured communication links, I have to ask you, how do you feel, if you don't mind, just double-clicking a little bit more on that, what does that do to society? How do we safeguard against it? How does that change the landscape of the way that industries are working and managing themselves today?
Well, the short answer is nobody knows. It's a crapshoot. Now, there's been some articles that I've read showing that mathematicians have been able to find a weak spot that would allow them to stop quantum computers from breaking into digital computers. But I don't think so. I have yet to see an algorithm that allows you to stop a quantum computer from breaking into a digital computer. Now, there have been announcements that we're on the verge or we have a breakthrough, but I'm a little bit skeptical. I have yet to see a definitive story that allows you to show without any doubt that you can stop a quantum computer from breaking into a digital computer. No, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying that I don't trust the statements that have been made so far claiming that they can do it. I doubt it.
Yeah. Adversarial nations are doing this thing called harvest now and decrypt later in hopes that quantum computers will eventually get stronger and powerful enough so they can then take and start breaking the codes against that personal data.
That's a hope.
That is a hope, yes. Nonetheless, it's something that they're trying to advance and achieve. You know, we want to try to secure and safeguard from that as much as possible. So when people think about quantum, they often only think about computing, but increasingly we're seeing a convergence across quantum computing, quantum networking, quantum sensing, AI, and secure communication. Do you believe that these long-term winners in the space will be individual technologies, or is it going to be more integrated platforms and ecosystems?
I think there's going to be integrated. If you work with just one platform, you may miss what's happening in other platforms. And so I think you have to keep an open mind. See, we're talking about a technology that is in its infancy at the present time. Quantum is different from digital. It has different architecture, different assumptions, different pacing. And so we have to keep an open mind. And you have to be open to different kinds of avenues that are not looked at even today. So I think we have to be open-minded about this thing, and open-minded about new architectures that could catch us totally by surprise.
Yeah, very interesting indeed, and I think that's that's the real question. Can we keep an open mind as a society? Can we stay open-minded enough to be able to start thinking about and tackling some of these problems? I know as Americans, we've got a historical need and desire to try to stay on the forefront of these sorts of things, and I only see that continuing, but I do think that there's some advocacy that needs to happen and a better understanding, not necessarily at the physics level, but just an awareness of how these things work. Basic principles of quantum physics will go a long way in just about every industry vertical out there. So we've seen a lot of organizations move beyond pure research into real-world developments, partnerships, and infrastructure development. In your view, what separates the organizations that will eventually lead the transition from those that just simply remain experimental by nature?
I think we have to be revolutionary in this respect. We can't simply do the same things over and over again, assuming that it's going to work in the future. We're talking about totally new territories that we haven't explored before in the past. Let me give you an example. When you go outside and you see the trees, the forests, the birds, they're doing computation. They are quantum computers. They're computing with molecules. They're way ahead of us. Just think about it. A flower involves quantum computation. Crops, food, all these are quantum mechanical things. They're not digital. When you look at the food on your dinner table, it was not a product of digital computing. No, it was all quantum computing. Quantum computing done with sunlight, with chlorophyll, with oxygen, with carbon dioxide. These are technologies that we haven't even explored yet, that Mother Nature solved millions of years ago to create what we call agriculture and life. So you see that we're children. We're children still in terms of understanding the full extent of quantum technologies. Mother Nature is still many steps ahead of us. Mother Nature already computes at the quantum mechanical level. So next time when you have dinner, realize that your dinner is a product of quantum technology. Quantum technology that is far beyond anything that we can do with our gigantic computers that only compute on individual atoms. No, Mother Nature is ahead of us. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is there are going to be surprises. We have to be prepared for surprises when we go into the quantum realm, which we're not comfortable with yet.
Very good. I mean, I guess you could extrapolate that even one step further and say that humans are a product of quantum mechanics, yes?
That's right.
We are doing these advanced quantum communications as individuals, but we don't really know much about, or even our own nature as humans.
How is it possible that DNA, a molecule, can create a human being? And the answer is quantum mechanics. But how is it done? How is it done that a molecule can simply reproduce itself to create arms, legs, nose, a spinal cord, a nervous system? It's incredible. Mother Nature solved it millions of years ago. And we're children trying to mimic that. And so with quantum computers, we're only mimicking the simplest aspect of quantum computing. Mother Nature is way ahead of us.
Yeah, very good, very good. And I think Richard Feynman would be very proud of these conversations today, for sure. So, Dr. Kaku, I want to thank you for taking the questions from us. What we'd like to do now is open it up to the audience for questions. So, I believe there's a series of microphones that are floating around. If we've got somebody who wants to go ahead and raise their hand, we can go ahead and try to. You, sir.
Hello. By the way, I loved your book, Physics of the Future. I read that twice, so great stuff. Here's my question. I read that either entangled or superimposed qubits, which are hard to maintain and easily disrupted, I read that one of the best ways for them to be able to hold their position at a distance is over fiber. So have we just over the last 30 years built what could be essentially a distributed qubit locations? And maybe it's easier to keep them cold in very tiny spaces throughout the network of fiber optics than in one big giant place. So I'm just curious, since fiber holds things in their superimposed places, is there an opportunity to use the network we've built?
Well, we're still at the early stages of being able to understand quantum physics. Quantum physics allows you to entangle things, to do things that Mother Nature has figured out millions of years ago that we're trying to reproduce now in the laboratory piece by piece. So we're still children when it comes to applying quantum mechanics to optics, for example. And so dealing with optical computers, dealing with the computation of the future, it's not quantum mechanical yet. We have yet to really use the full power of quantum mechanics in our machines. Our machines are still basically classical. So we're children when we think about how Mother Nature has used quantum mechanics, entanglement, different kinds of aspects of quantum mechanics to solve problems millions of years ago that we're simply trying to solve today. So sorry about that. We're still children.
All right, next question. Yes, sir.
Let's see. So stemming off that question.
One second. Let's get you some volume here.
All right. Let's try it. There we go. So stemming off that question, quantum networking seems to promise instantaneous communication with no fiber. Well, this is a room full of fiber optics companies, and we're talking about an advent which may be happening 10 years from now. Are we expanding the definition of fiber to simply include that kind of technology, or is it just that the fiber industry is the only industry in a position to distribute that kind of technology? I mean, who else?
Well, if you had the answer to that question, let's talk about it tonight and maybe we'll invest in something. The fact of the matter is that quantum fiber optics is a frontier question. Fiber optics today is basically classical. Let's face it, you take Maxwell's equations, you apply Maxwell's equations to fiber optics, and you get what is called the fiber optics industry. Quantum fiber optics is a whole nother level, and it's experimental, and it's still guesswork at the present time, but that could be the frontier, quantum fiber optics. So the answer to that is, I don't know.
Yeah, and I can say, at least from an IonQ's perspective, we are currently doing work on a 10-kilometer loop in Chattanooga, Tennessee, with EPB, and we're trying to figure out exactly what those mechanics and mechanisms are going to look like. How do you distribute entanglement at a distance? Right? There are memory technologies that are going to have to be created. There are repeater technologies that are going to have to be created. Frequency converters are going to have to be created. As the last individual mentioned, the coherent states of these qubits can be disrupted very easily, right? So when you think about the aerial fiber, there's tons of aerial fiber that's spread all across the U.S. We found it better to work underground. Underground fibers seem to allow for the distribution of these photons at a distance to maintain their coherence for a lot longer. Next question.
Yes, Dr. Kaku, thank you for the presentation. And I have a question that I hope you can answer, or maybe it might be more appropriate for your chauffeur to answer, I'm not sure. But, we look at the rise of hyperscale data centers and the massive investment that's going into these to create learning models, AI learning models that eventually will transfer to AI inference. We're looking at several orders of magnitude investment in these data centers compared to the entire cellular network, the phone network. And I'm wondering, in future, to develop quantum computing at a commercial level, what kind of investment can we anticipate that it's going to take to get there?
Well, I get asked that question an awful lot because people want to know, where should I put my money? Where should I put my money in terms of investment? What is going to be hot? What is going to be the next big thing that's going to break things open and make me rich beyond comprehension? Well, the short answer is it's a crapshoot. The short answer is we're talking about a technology that is still in its infancy, and it could go either way. So if I tell you to invest in this technology, which is still in its infancy, and it doesn't pan out, don't blame me later, because we don't know. We're talking about a technology that is emerging, that is still in its infancy. And you can put your bets now, put your money on the table, but it's a crapshoot, okay? Because it takes more than just physics. It takes business acumen. It takes a certain understanding of not just physics, but supply and demand, about what it takes to commercialize this technology, to make money on this technology, to advertise, to propagate the thing. So in other words, we're still talking about a technology that is in its infancy once you talk about marrying quantum mechanics with fiber optics.
All right, last question, please.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. If we're getting closer at the verge to engineer things at a quantum level, and Mother Nature is a quantum computer, who's to say that we won't be able to change reality, and who's to say that that hasn't been done yet? In other words, is this a simulation?
Oh, that's a heck of a last question, Dr. Kaku. Have at it.
So in other words, are we puppets dancing on a stage, and there's a puppet master that determines our motions, and the world is not quantum mechanical at all. The world is basically a puppet show. Well, I don't think so. I believe in quantum mechanics, and the fact is that there's only probabilities. Only probabilities can be calculated. On a puppet show, you can calculate exactly the motions of the future. There's no uncertainty at all, but that's not reality. Reality is based on the uncertainty principle, on quantum mechanics, and the bottom line is reality is a crapshoot.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank everybody for their time this morning. Dr. Kaku, I'd like to especially thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege to be able to sit on stage with you and ask you these questions as we think through how quantum technologies are going to impact every single aspect of society and industry in the future. So thank you very much, and thanks again to the FBA team for their support on this, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your conference. Our whole universe was in a